getting late. Got it all, babe. Say vamos when you're ready. I'm here when you need me. Tell me if I got it wrong, but you don't wanna be alone. Spend the evening by yourself, but you'll miss me when it's getting late. Got it all, babe. Say vamos when you're ready. I'm here when you need me. I'm yours if you'll let me. Got it all, babe. Say vamos when you're ready. I'm here when you need me. I'm yours if you let go, boy. Loving is a safe card. You don't have to play hard. Love and let go, boy. You don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. Every time is a blessing, and I know we can take it to the next level. If you let go, boy, you don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. Go ahead and tell your friends. Talk it out, but it won't end. You are never true to heart. You need me when it's getting dark. Got it all, babe. Say vamos when you're ready. I'm here when you need me. I'm yours if you let me. Got it all, babe. Say vamos when you're ready. I'm here when you need me. I'm yours if you let go, boy. Loving is a safe card. You don't have to play hard. Love and let go, boy. You don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. Every time is a blessing, and I know we can take it to the next level. If you let go, boy, you don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. If you let go, boy, loving is a safe card. You don't have to play hard. You love and let go, boy. You don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. Every time is a blessing, and I know we can take it to the next level. If you let go, boy, you don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it.
Sometimes it burns, sometimes it hurts when you say my name, but thinking of hers. I don't wanna know, don't want you to go and leave me behind. No, I don't wanna see if it isn't me who's on your mind. 'Cause I don't know what you're looking for. Oh, and I don't know what to do. Hold back, let go. There is nothing more for me to show. You're hiding to breathe, running from me. Do you really wanna be in love? Halfway from home, up my phone. I stared at your face, but it's not your tone. Saying oh hello, who are you to call me late in the night? She says I just gotta say that it's here with me and not where he might be. 'Cause I don't know what you're looking for. Oh, and I don't know what to do. Hold back, let go. There is nothing more for me to show. You're hiding to breathe, running from me. Do you really wanna be? Oh baby, tell me you need me, that you can't stand it no more, that she ain't what you're looking for. Oh, oh baby, oh tell me you love me. You know it took two to break us down. Now you're gone and won't be found. 'Cause I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know what you're looking for. And I don't know what to do. Hold back, let go. There is nothing more for me to show. You're hiding to breathe, running from me. Do you really wanna be in love?
before you. Choose wisely. Illusions can become delusions if you're not willing to do the work or the introspection to determine where those illusions and delusions came from. Many men have been conditioned in America to think like blue pill simps. And that blue pill simp connotation is more or less based off of the rose-colored glasses, which more or less was predicated off of the velvet color painting. Dr. T. Hasan Johnson and my man Dr. Dunder and Deacon Eric Spencer are going to be exploring the dynamics of how many men have been hoodwinked or smiggled into relationships only to come to their peril as it relates to the fortification of the mind. Many men enter into marriages and relationships assuming that they're going to get unlimited sex. They enter into a relationship assuming that they're going to get the love and the joys and the things that they have or more or less thought their grandmothers and mothers got. But the idea of romanticism has more or less deceived a lot of men. And because of that deception, many men have developed a schema affliction. That schema affliction have led many men to courts. It's led many men to their own peril, as some are victims of divorce and some are victims of mental and emotional abuse. Dr. T. Hasan Johnson surgically more or less dissects all the dynamics of what he's seen in his seminal work, but also what he went through as a man as it relates to relationships and how those relationships have more or less caused him and others to be in a negative state of disrepair. We're going to use a 15-minute clip on today. In that 15-minute clip, I want you guys to listen what Dr. T. Hasan Johnson is saying and then ask yourself the question, have you been hoodwinked or more or less deluded by the illusion of the rose-colored glasses, which is also a byproduct of the velvet-colored painting? This is going to be a red pill moment where we're going to pull the wool off your eyes and you're going to see modern relationships for what they really are. And then you're going to ask yourself the question, are modern relationships really worth it? Should I focus on myself, or should I properly vet modern women before I decide to give my life, my time, and my resources to a woman that may become fickle and leave me in a negative divorce? I told you guys that there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become optimized. Female psychology is paramount to that, but also male mental and male physical health. And I want you to remember this. If it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. There are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become an optimized male. And once you go through those 7 steps, you'll begin to see things for what they are and not be a victim of the rose-colored glasses. Be well. About to start the show in a minute. Sit back, relax, we're going to start the show. We're going to be talking about the velvet color paintings after this intro. Bringing it to you live once again from the greatest state in the Union, the Tar Heel State, where the topography is serene, pristine, and verdant green, where every day is Father's Day, and where manhood is part of hills and valleys, victories and failures, and whereas men, we don't agree on all things or ideologies, but tonight we come together as allies of a common cause only to dissipate once the crisis is over. Now listen, I'm about to drop some fire for your mind. But before I drop that fire, let's explore why we are doing the Manhood Chronicles. All right. We're bringing to you live once again from the greatest state in the Union, the Tar Heel State. And so listen, fellow clinicians, fellow enlightened brothers and sisters. We're going to have a powerful show on today. And we're going to be talking about the importance of the velvet-colored paintings, but also the rose-colored glasses that many men have been more or less hoodwinked into by assuming that relationships are forever. I want you guys to look at this 15-minute clip by Dr. T. Hasan Johnson and I. And I want you to ask yourself the questions, are modern relationships really worth it? And have you been more or less hoodwinked into the ideal of romanticism and love? Now listen, if you haven't donated, donate to $7Smalls. Please donate to $7Smalls. And while this stream is streaming, please share the content. Hit like, hit share, hit all notification buttons, and share this content as we're about to start the show. So I want you guys to look at this 15-minute clip to all the young men that are listening, because this is really going out to the young men, especially to the young men, like the young lion before the billions. But this is going out to the young men. I want you guys to listen to this show, because I don't want you guys to get into relationships thinking one way by actually being deluded. I want you to have as much information as you can. So I want you to hit 1 if you shared the content. Everybody leave 1 if they shared the content. And we're about to start a 15-minute clip. I'm not going to interrupt this clip, but I want you guys to listen. I want you guys to listen, and then we're going to have a discussion about the rose-colored glasses and the rose-colored glasses as a byproduct of the velvet-colored painting. So hold tight. We're going to check this out, and I want you guys to have a conversation among yourselves and ask yourself the questions, are modern relationships really worth it? All right. And how was your schema afflicted based on the image that was perpetuated from so-called relics of the past?
Well, I think, there's definitely a romanticized idea about what the union between the black man and woman is. And that, again, especially for those of us that are coming out of the nationalist community, this is something we kind of pedestalize in a very kind of ideal way that I think didn't really, make it easy for us in terms of the practical day-to-day reality. I mean, I myself was married for about 9 years. I was with my wife for 11. She passed away. And I can say that the biggest issue impacting us was that neither one of us had actually grown up seeing a functional day-to-day marriage.
Right.
Neither one of us. So we had these ideas about what that must look like. And that's a very different thing, especially if you have girls that are being socialized to think about marriage since they were children. I mean, she had books and designs about what marriage would be like that she was writing since she was 5. Most men, myself included, we didn't really think about marriage until, just a little bit before we found somebody we might want to be with. So, but the reality was neither one of us had those experiences. We'd mostly seen broken relationships. We'd mostly seen situationships that, sometimes bared children, things of that nature. And from there, we had an impractical base to try and build a life. And the only thing we really knew, we really agreed upon, is that we didn't want our child to grow up in a divorced household. But even that's enough to build a functional family if that's all you have to go on.
Right.
This is why I say this goes back to the 1960s, because this is a multi-generational issue. This isn't just about 2 people who are getting married. You have to, really, and this is common sense. When you marry someone, you're marrying their family. You're marrying into their family. They're marrying into yours. Even if you don't have one, the legacy of not having a family impacts your family, right? There are things that you don't know how to do, ways of negotiating and engaging people that you may not have experience with, especially like I married someone who had a huge family. I myself, it was just, my mother and my sister, and occasionally we saw grandparents. I may have seen my father once a year. Very different family structures. You know what I mean? These kind of things, really play into, how we even, what our standard is for what it means to be in a union. Those are the kind of issues on the table. But I always come back to policy, because at the end of the day, women are also being socialized into relationships knowing that if this man doesn't make you happy, you can use the state to please him for what you want and move on to the next. We saw what just happened with Dr. Dre.
Right.
Pay $3.6 million a year until she gets married again or is in another domestic union. Now, I had a professor, right, who was a mentor of mine. She's now in her 70s. She was married in the early 1980s. She got a divorce in the early 1980s. Her husband from the early 1980s is still paying alimony to today.
Wow.
She just retired from her work and she's still getting alimony today. They broke up in like 1981.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So when girls are shown across generations, from their grandmothers to their mothers to themselves and their daughters, that they can do this to men whenever a man doesn't help you meet your fantasy relationship, what kind of relationships do you develop? You develop relationships where women have a sense of power by proxy from the state, and men know they're walking into a wood chipper if they can't make her fantasies come true. Fantasies she's had since she was 5 years old, and you just start thinking about marriage when you met her.
Right.
Bad recipe.
Well, it sounds like, once again, that, I think women come into relationships being pragmatic. Men come into relationships based on what you said, Dr. Johnson, about the rose-colored glasses, or what I call the art of romanticism. Dr. Dunn, I want you to talk about some of the things you struggled with in your first marriage. Share what you want to share. And are marriages really worth it in this current milieu called America?
Yeah, I mean, without getting too specific, I mean, I'm in my second marriage.
Yes, sir.
My first marriage, I mean, it was exactly that. It was, we came from different kind of backgrounds. She didn't have a relationship with her dad, and I think that had played a big role.
Yes.
In the kind of lack of success that we had in our relationship. I of course, I'm very close with my dad, and at times she actually resented the closeness that I had with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And to my knowledge, at least at the time, her dad was still alive, but hadn't been in her life since she was 4 or 5 or something. And I remember even having the conversation about her reconnecting with her father, how that was always a very contentious. It was always a lot of there's a lot of stuff buried there, and but I mean, she was very, very aggressive. She was pouring it on, and I'm an introvert.
Right.
So, and I was in my, early to mid 20s. So not only was I an introvert, I didn't have any game to speak of. All I was doing was working on, trying to make myself the best I could be, pursuing music, going to school, doing the stuff I need to do. So, I didn't have no, crazy body count or anything like that. That's not what I was doing. I wasn't approaching women that way.
Right.
And so when she showed a certain kind of interest and then was very aggressive and assertive, I mean, that's kind of all it took. And I was simping. I'll admit. I have a series of videos on my channel called Blue Pill Testimonials, and there's 10 videos, there's a variety of stories on various levels of my simping. But it wasn't until I was early 30s, close to mid 30s almost, that I kind of grew out of that, and that I was even able to tell a woman no.
Yeah.
Or step away from a particular kind of thing. And and that's all. I don't have anyone to blame for that. My dad, he taught me better than that, but I just that was just what was happening. I had so romanticized the idea that women can do no wrong,
right?
So that I just believed them, and over I believed them. But anyhow, as soon as it began, I mean, the whole thing took about 7 years to totally complete. But then she was out. So that's how that went. That's how the first one went down. But yeah, it's a tough thing. But I can speak at length about sexual alienation. You know, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's such a raw deal because there's nothing you can do. I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, I'm a religious man, and so I didn't. Not only would I have, I wouldn't have wanted to step out, but then also, I'm not wired that way. I'm a one woman kind of guy.
Right,
That's
right.
how I've always been. And so that being the case, it's like you're stuck. So if she's saying no, then, and I'm like in my 20s, man. And it's like that was hardcore, man. That was really rough situation.
Well, guys, as a clinical therapist, I try to look at things through what I call the biopsychosocial spiritual model. But I came up with two terms. I didn't create the term called simping, but I said there are two types of simps. There's a conscious simp and there's the unconscious simp. The conscious simp is like a lot of us men, we know in our internal hard drive what's going on is wrong, but we've been conditioned to go against our nature. And so the conscious simp stands for sacrificing important masculine principles. That's the conscious simp. A lot of men have been conscious simps, including myself. But then you got the unconscious simp. Those are men that don't know any better. Those are men sacrificing irrational male patterns. That's the unconscious simp. So, Dr. Johnson, let me ask you a question. Have men in America been consciously or unconsciously conditioned to be simps?
Well, I think that's definitely the case. It's partly built on the very Western idea of chivalry, which is a facet of patriarchy. So it's built into Western masculinity. But in the Black community, it's compounded by this framework where we're primarily raised by Black women. And what tends to happen when you're raised by women is they try to shape you into the man they want.
Yes.
I mean, that's essentially what mothers will do. Even if they don't, the problem with that is it's kind of like if you ask someone to build a car and they don't know anything about cars, what they'll do is at best they'll build the outside design based on what they think it should look like, but they have no idea what the inner workings look like, how they function, what they are. So a lot of young men, because I'm Generation X, and we were the first generation to really be raised by single parents across the board to the extent that we have been, right? So we had mothers that basically taught us how to be really, and this is, a bit edible, they taught us how to be husbands for them, but they didn't understand how to teach young men the inner workings of manhood. So we learned the performance, but we didn't learn the rationale. We didn't learn for many of us who didn't have fathers there on a day-to-day basis, and we didn't witness functional relationships often. So these kind of things set us up in many ways to really not know how to function in the way we need. And so that's kind of part of the dynamic there when you start talking about simping. So we learned this, we got this. And again, if you add this extra element of pro-Black, I mean, I'm the son of a Panther, right?
Oh, wow. Right.
So the kind of pro-Black, idea about what it means, and this is key, what it means to be a good man, what it means to be a good Black man, right? The ideas we learned about what it means to be a good Black man were often sacrificial, and they were often about prioritizing her feelings, her worldview, her outlook, happy wife, happy life. We learned that she was the focal point we were supposed to protect and provide from the outside. And one of the things that morphed into over time, especially among Black women, the culture of Black women, it became what's yours is mine, what's mine is mine, as far as how women looked at it. So your resources, you sacrificing yourself to protect her and the family, all of that worked as long as it prioritized her and she didn't have to extend anything. Now, the other half to that is that what a lot of these women who were being introduced to feminism, because feminism was what really offsets the civil rights movement and reprioritizes the very idea of gender roles, especially in the Black community, right? So one of the things feminism teaches them is that it's not only all about them, but that they can now cherry pick from traditionalism, right? So protect and provide is still welcome. But what used to go with protecting and providing? When men protected and provided, there was an exchange of duties that took place, right? The men protected and provided. What did the women do? They prioritized, they nurtured, they took care of hearth and home. There was an exchange going on. But what feminism taught people to do, most particularly women, was to expect the protection and provision, but provide nothing. Now, what does that mean? That means she can work part-time, she can work full-time, she can go to school, she can not work at all, she can have a baby, she can abort a baby, she has all the choices of what she wants to do with her life. Even if you're married to her, you have none. If she is pregnant with your first child and decides to abort it, what exactly can you do about it?
Right.
You have no recourse.
You have no recourse. I agree.
So that's the dynamic on the table, especially post 1980. Why by the time we get to Oprah Winfrey, and she starts taking these fairly obscure Black feminist ideas and putting them out into the public, we are now experiencing a major shift in gender understanding and gender dynamics, gender roles, and for men, we are completely blindsided. Blindsided. So we're still playing from an old playbook of Black male sacrifice. She has a whole new playbook of Black female first.
So it sounds like to me, Dr. Johnson, that it's the worship of the female as being superior to the man, which in essence leads to what I call solipsism. You have a patent term in the manosphere called the concupiscible. We're going to talk about that. But to pair what you said, Dr. Johnson, I created a term called the commodification of subjugation as it relates to solipsism. But then there's the commodification of glorification as it relates to building. There was a time where Black men were commodities that worked together with their women to build infrastructures and communities. But now it appears that Black men and a lot of men in America are commodities to be subjugated as it relates to her solipsistic needs. If you look at Smeagol was solipsistic because it was all about him. I want you to talk to the audience about solipsism and the concupiscible and how those two terms coalesce together from your best estimation.
Well, solipsism basically is a female priority of themselves, and this has its basis in nature to some extent. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know how many rational creatures would have more than one child. If men could have babies today, well, that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, if men could actually have children, you doing it once, you really wouldn't do it again, right? But you have to have an irrational kind of relationship to nature and to reproduction to even want to do that. Because for men, having sex is, we enjoy it, we impregnate someone, and then from there, it's just a lot of waiting and so on and so forth. For her, she has to go through a whole transformation. So in one sense, that solipsism is part of a framework where women have a different relationship to reproduction. And it's somewhat natural, but what's happened is it's been mutated, it's been exploited. And again, when you factor in feminism, you also have to factor in the economy in the 1970s. The dollar bill flattens out. It becomes an imperative, even for white families, to now have two incomes. And so the market opens up for women workers. This becomes a whole different thing in the Black community, because unlike the white community where women are coming into the workforce, Black women have always been working. So this actually meant that they got elevated in terms of the type of access they had at the same time while Black men were being pushed out. Because the 70s is also when the war on drugs kicks in, when increased incarceration kicks in, and jobs are overseas. So now men who've enjoyed at least a couple decades since World War II of stable, relatively stable employment, now they're finding themselves out of work. And the younger generation are coming into. This is why hip hop is born in the ghetto, right? Because this is a generation of people that come into it with no job prospects, no employment, no education. They have nothing. So they have to build what they can out of what they have, which is essentially nothing. But the girls are going to school.
Right.
The girls are getting mid-level white collar job access. The girls are learning these corporate culture ideas and then coming to relationships with Black men like, like you were functioning in a corporation and you work for her. This is how these things are playing out from the 70s through the 90s. And men are wholly unprepared for a lot of this. Wholly unprepared. But I apologize if I didn't answer your question.
No, you did it brilliantly. Listen, guys, we have a power-packed show. It doesn't get any better than the venerable Dr. T. Hasan Johnson and the venerable Dr. Thunder. We got a freedom fighter with my man E. Spencer to the right, and he's gonna take Dr. Johnson to the promised land at some point. And we got my man Dr. Thunder, which is a theologian, and you have myself, the kosher clinician, a licensed therapist. Listen, there's a scheme affliction on the minds of men in America. A lot of men are suffering in silence. And I started the kosher clinician out of a process called sublimation, meaning to turn something bad into something good, because many men went to the grave with dreams unfulfilled. You can hear the echoes of those men that are in the grave right now because nobody spoke power to their needs. So listen, If you like what I'm doing, please cash out 7 Smalls. Please cash out $7 Smalls. Like, share, hit the subscription button, and go check out my man, Dr. Hasan Johnson, and subscribe to his channel on The Honest Report. And also go check out my man, Dr. Thunder, and get some of that soulful music that can bring power and tranquility to your soul. Dr. Thunder, and we're going to bring Eric in a minute. But Dr. Thunder, is it mental abuse to deny your husband sex in a relationship from your best estimation?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you, see, women and men are different. And men, abuse from a man is going to tend to be some sort of act of violence. But abuse from a woman is going to be it's going to be done differently, because they don't have the physical, they can't overpower us. So they have to outthink us, or they have to manipulate us in different ways. And one of the primary ways, and this has been, forever and ever on men, one of the primary ways that they manipulate us is with the feminine wiles, right? It's with their sexuality. And it's either with offering it in exchange for something that they want, or it's cutting it off because of some disapproval that they have with an aspect of your conduct. Or it could be, as it was what I believe in my first situation, that once it was surmised that we were not going to have children, that no longer was it necessary. It was not a necessary, it was a punishment. It was, this is really what I wanted out of this. Since that's off the table, it's no longer something that we're going to do.
Dr. Johnson, you talked in the past about your schema affliction. I know you were married for a period of time, and share what you feel like you're worthy that you want the audience to know. But I want you to tell the audience about the pain that you went through and the duration that you went through when you were married. And do you think you were a conscious simp or an unconscious simp as it relates to what you went through as a man when you were married in the past?
Oh, I think I was both. I mean, there were layers of simphood going on. you have the basic programming you get, from how you're raised, and then you get the extra level, which I volunteered for, being and I'm still pro-black. Don't get me wrong. It's not. Right. I'm not saying that that's a negative, but I am saying with that came a series of assumptions about what a good black man was, that in many ways was self-destructive. It was very, that simpish thing. It wasn't just about, giving in to her every need. It was about putting my life on the line without even reflecting upon whether or not this was a relationship that offered an exchange. So when you get to my pain, one of the things I talked about on a show I did a couple months ago, about sexless marriages, is I talked about my own experience with it, where out of the 9 years we were married, 5 of those years were virtually sexless.
Oh my God. Wow. 5?
Yeah, it was 5.
Oh, no way in hell.
And she, and so and I never found out the reason for it, at least directly from her. I never found out why. So I tried everything I could think of. I tried arguing, I tried discussion, we tried counseling, and it was nothing that I could find out directly. So here I am believing that the answer is marrying and building black families. And I do that, and I'm married, and I have a child on the way, and I'm in graduate school, and I'm doing all these things to build my velvet painting. And then one day my wife just stops.
Wow.
No explanation, no clarification, stops. I mean, it got to the point, I heard this phrase in a movie. It was like we were roommates with running a small daycare. That's what it got to be like after a while. And the problem with that for me was not only what was going on in my relationship, but it dramatically impacted my view on marriage, because I was like, whoa, I didn't even know this could happen. I thought this happened to people in their 70s. And I figured by your 70s, at least before the advent of Viagra, who cares? Your wife stops giving it to you in your 70s. I didn't think much of it. But this happened when we were in our 20s and 30s. Right. So I'm like, if you can marry and your wife can completely shut down, do you know what kind of recourse you have? there's virtually nothing. I mean, look, what I found is if your wife shuts down, you got a couple choices. You can stay and suck it up. And I have boys who've been married for 20 years who are going through this very thing to this day. And they call me every month with the same issues. So you can suck it up and pretend like it's not happening, which is a certain kind of hell that you put yourself through. But many of these men are doing it to sacrifice for their children, right? So that's the velvet painting. You can get a divorce. Now, again, I grew up from a divorced household, so did she. I didn't want to see my son every 2 weeks. I didn't want to wonder what man was in the house, boyfriend she had that was near my son. Like, I didn't want to go through that, but that's an option. And then, of course, the other option you have is to cheat. Well, but the problem with cheating is you eventually get caught. I mean, you live with this person. It's not like you just seeing each other every other weekend. You know what I mean? So these were the options that I found left to me. And I'm thinking, I don't want any of these. I didn't get married to become a monk. That wasn't my goal. But again, it was one of those things that nobody had ever explained to me that could happen. And I think, the more I started to speak out about this, the more men that I have writing me. I did this show a couple months ago. I still have men writing me like, yo, I'm living this now. I'm going through this now. And if I leave her, if I divorce her, I lose half of what I have.
Right.
So it's not
in the early church,
why men are pulling back.
Go ahead.
Yeah, in the early church, there was esteemed were considered two paths to salvation. When I say early church, I'm talking about 2,000 years ago, early church. There's two paths. Okay. There is celibacy and marriage. Those are the two paths to salvation. All right. Now, obviously, we look at celibacy, we're like, man, especially a young man is like, well, that ain't the path I want. And then marriage, and I think it gets sort of romanticized, but marriage is every bit the challenge and struggle that living a life as a celibate would be, right? Except for it's worse now, because now you could actually be married but also celibate. And so those two are not supposed to accompany each other.
Right.
But it gets worse though. This is how it gets worse. You're already celibate in a marriage. Go out and have a girlfriend and watch how your wife acts. Right.
No, you're right. And you know what? You made a very profound point. I'm going to say this because I grew up conservative. I might not live out the mandates of the gospel like I used to, but I grew up Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal holiness. In my mind, it's a sin. She's cheating when she's denying you sex. She's actually cheating because she's depriving you based on the tenets of theology, what the Bible called the due benevolence. The due benevolence, actually those things which are good. So in my mind, if a woman is denying you her body because she signed up for the contract, you got to give her an admonition to step it up and get it together. Wow. If not, in my mind, if she's denying you her body, you have a right to either divorce her or do what you need to do until you can move on. Because the gospel say the only time a woman should deny her husband sex is when she's fasting and praying. That's the only time. Right.
Well,
after that, the gospel
both agreed on it.
And you both agreed on it.
Both agreed on it.
Yes, sir. Right. And you both come back together so that the devil won't come into it. So a lot of American women are leading their men astray if that man decides to go out and step out because she's not fulfilling her duty. And I'm going to tell men to the ones who are listening, you are a fool if you keep contributing to a woman that's not giving you sex. I don't blame her. I blame you. You need to start developing an exit strategy.
Well,
go ahead.
Here's the thing, though. There's a new religion that's at play. And it actually supersedes and undergirds most religious traditions in the West.
Right.
And if it hasn't hit your religion, just wait. It's coming. And it's called feminism.
Right.
Kevin Samuels beautifully dealt with last year when he talked about the way feminism kind of infiltrated the Christian church.
Right.
But, it's happening with brothers who are practicing Yoruba and Ifa. It's happening with Muslims. It's happening in different ways and to different degrees. But here's the thing. When you made a statement a moment ago that she is not following, what she's supposed to be, actually she is, according to the new religion. And the religion is that women can do whatever they want, whenever they feel like, and you need to accept it. And the degree to which you are not a constructive, positive, supportive male is the degree to which you will not allow her to do this. Now, I'll give you an example. It can be in terms of sex. Try sitting down, whether it's the Quran or whether it's the Bible, and you're trying to walk her into why she should give you her body. Watch how that discussion goes if she doesn't want to. That's the first thing. But we can apply it to other areas. I had a situation where I was in graduate school. I literally was working 4 jobs, one of which was full-time while going to school full-time. She was out of work. So when I left at 7 in the morning one morning, the house was a mess. When I got home at 10 o'clock at night, the house was a mess. Of course, there was no food. And when I said, yo, what's going on? Wait a minute. I'm a woman. I'm not a servant. I'm not a slave. Now, I didn't marry a rampant feminist. I married a woman who did not seem anything like that. But when pressed into a corner, those feminist ideas that are so popularly extended in popular culture came right out, which meant that as long as I provided a roof, shelter, clothing, all these other kind of things, trips, bills were paid, she could receive all of that. But when it came to me asking for a meal, when it came to me asking for a clean home, now all of a sudden I'm a woman and I shouldn't have to be a slave. See, this is the dynamic that feminism allows them. It allows them to have a cherry-picked traditionalism that you yourself have very little in response to argue back with once you're in the marriage itself. And if you push too far and she initiates a divorce, which is fine as long as you're ready for that. And many of us aren't ready for that emotionally or financially.
This effect of feminism on everything in the West is why the passport bros, if they're going to wife someone up, they need to stay in that other country. Because as soon as you bring a woman here, it won't be long before that feminism will be right in your house. I was watching Uncle D, Dennis Sperling, and he was talking about with his fiance how he's not allowing her to have certain kinds of associations, and the reason is because he sees how some of these other folks are talking, and he knows what's going to happen. He knows they're going to start filling her head with X, Y, and Z, and you have to be, part of marriage, part of a relationship is the man is actually supposed to be protecting the woman from the effects of society. So from not just physically, but is supposed to be protecting her. And unfortunately, the way we have it set up now is it seemed that we're doing them harm by trying to protect them from stuff that we know that is going to likely harm them, but not only harm them, it's going to probably destroy our relationship. It's an impossible situation. Like, what do you do?
Well, I'm gonna tell you what.
Into this point that Dr. T. Hasan Johnson was saying earlier about, not wanting to, wait, see your kid every other week. I'm going to tell you in a very real way. And maybe this is going to seem, look, especially if you have a son, you need to do whatever you have to do and struggle it out, because you know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen, and you know how devastating it's going to be on that boy to be raised basically by his mom, and all of the negative things that can happen. And that's that's a heck of a reason to stay married.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's a real reason though.
Can I add to that, brother?
Go ahead, Doc.
Go ahead.
There's one of the things I talked about in a recent show I did. There's a young man who's an actor, and his name escapes me, forgive me, but he was in the recent Superfly remake. And he had a couple of videos, one with Umar Johnson, where he was really frustrated at the mother, his own mother, in real life, and how she had actually raised him, how she had lied to him, how she had abused him. And he finally, at the age of, I think, 28, had a sit down with his father. And this is something I said in response to that exchange he talked about. For many of us, there is a father somewhere that we've learned to hate, we've learned to be frustrated with, but we never got his side of the story. Now, that's not to say that men are perfect. It's not to say women are perfect. It is to say I'm a big advocate of getting the other side of the story. And for some of us, there is a father who has a box of receipts that you've not sat down and looked through yet. And by receipts, I mean, this young man, when he told this story, he said, my mother said, you never sent us one child's support payment. This man pulled out a box and showed receipt after receipt about continued child support payments. And that was the thing that really woke him up to the reality of what he was being lied to about. It woke him up that he actually had a father who cared, but didn't know it. Now, I'm not all saying we have that, Cinderella story where there's some perfect father waiting for us. If you didn't know your father, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, as human beings, we all err. And when it comes to Black fathers who often haven't had a chance to tell their side of the story, you might find, if you sat down with them, that you'll find out more about the other half of your life you don't know about once you have that sit down. But when you're raised to actually hate or have no relationship with your father, and this is something Dr. Thunder was talking about in terms of his wife, right? It has an impact on you and how you interact with others and how you deal with your own family. I mean, how does she treat her son if she has no idea what masculinity is and has no inherent respect for it, right? So these are things that we have to kind of get out on the table. And I tell men, sit down with your father. Have that conversation. I don't care if he was the worst man in the world. Sit down with your father, and I guarantee you'll learn something you didn't know.
Well, listen, we got an antidote to that. We got Brother Eric Spencer from BMO called Black Man Options. I got it right this time, Eric. And basically what Eric is trying to tell brothers that there are women from other countries that are actually fit, feminine, and they're very cooperative. And they have been trained in patriarchal cultures where they're conditioned to more or less love and treat their husbands right. Now, listen, guys, we got a power-packed show. We got Dr. T. Hasan Johnson. I call him the Falcon. Falcon and what's that guy name? Captain American Falcon. And we got Colossus up here, Dr. Thunder. And of course, I'm Luke Cage. But I'm Luke Cage. But Eric, is it a myth that bringing women back to America is a wrong choice, or it depends on how she was raised and her spiritual upbringing? And tell the audience who you are, brother.
All right. Well, first off, salute to Dr. Thunder and Professor T. Hasan Johnson, and also BGS in the chat. My name is Eric Spencer. I am one of the admins for the Black Man's Option. It was the group that was originally started by Charles Tyler. 2017, Charles Tyler passed away in Brazil. Wow. And we have continued his legacy. We have a group of people that are working behind the scenes to give brothers options. And our results speak for itself. Right. If you've seen Dr. Neal's latest and greatest video, at least the one when he came back, that's what BMO can do for you. Right. So, T. Hasan Johnson, Dr. Thunder, come on down.
Come on down.
now to answer your question, it depends on you as a person, because I have friends that are married to Brazilians that live in the States. Yeah. I also have a friend that is engaged to be married January the 2nd. So it is happening, and it can happen. You just have to make sure that the woman that you're dealing with comes from a family, a stable family. But even if they don't, they're still socialized to respect their men. Feminism hasn't set in like that there. They're trying to. The problem is there's too much competition and there's not enough men to go around. See, a lot of the things that you guys are talking about, I understand. But when you come to the Black Man's Option, we show you a different dynamic that most Black men are not accustomed to. They're not accustomed to being around feminine women. They're not accustomed to being around abundance of women. And they're not accustomed to being around women that are aggressive and that know the worth of their men. That sexless marriage stuff, you think it goes on in Brazil? Oh, no. Right. Why? Because it's a fresh crop that comes up every single month. And when you go there, guys literally lose it because they have not been exposed to the amount of general beauty of the women. I'm not saying that they're all 8s, 9s, and 10s, no. But when you go out, you're going to see something you like. Whether you're going to the store, you're going to pump gas, hell, if you just going to the post office and get some stamps, you're going to see something that you like. And you get accustomed to seeing it over and over and over again.
Right.
And you can approach them. Hey, how are you doing? Fine. And they're going to give you all kind of open play.
Right. Right.
And for a lot of guys, it's alien because we've been here in the Matrix.
Yeah.
We're stuck behind enemy lines. And a lot of guys don't have reference to compare it to.
Yeah.
Because when they go there, they see what femininity could really be like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they understand there's competition for those men. So when they come back to the States, they have a different frame that they can pull from.
Right.
They can say, I don't have to put up with this. You know what? I got my passport and I can book a flight.
Yeah.
You can be replaced.
Right.
You know, that's profound. And I want to say, I
started this because I'm sorry. So shout out to my man Christopher for the $2 super chat. Rest in power. I had to unmute myself. And I wanted to do this show because there are young men like the young lion named Before the Billions that want to get married. And he's a good kid, a young brother I've been watching. He supports me. I support him. But he wants to get married. And I want to make men understand that before they get in a relationship, they need to understand how most modern relationships could potentially end. They can't go into the relationship having rose-colored glasses based on the velvet-colored painting. Now listen, guys, if you have not donated, please donate to Cash App $7 Smalls. Please donate to Cash App $7 Smalls. Tim, I want you to drop the link so we can have a discussion, because to the men that have been listening, I want you guys to give me your feedback. Because as a licensed therapist, men are at risk of suicide when they're in high-risk divorce. They're at risk of suicide. Many often go on to kill themselves because they're shocked by what they thought was love based on the ideal or the illusion of love. But they kill themselves because they don't get the outcomes that they wanted as it relates to relationships. So listen, if you guys have not donated, donate to $7 Smalls and hit the super chats, because these shows are time consuming. And let's have a conversation. Tim dropped the link. What did you guys get from the show? What did you get from the channel, from the show? What did you get from the topic of discussion as it relates to the velvet color painting? Because these conversations are very important, and these conversations are very relevant. And so, D, you said what happened to the show? Well, it was a clip. It was a clip for guys to take notes so we can have a discussion. The show actually is on my YouTube channel. I actually did the show a couple of months ago, but I wanted to bring it back to attention. You can watch the full show under the Smeagling of the American Male. You'll see Smeagol on the cover, so you guys can look at the show, the full show. But that was a clip that I wanted to show the guys from the past. So let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion about the show. To those that are listening, please call in, check in. Let's have a conversation about marriage and relationships. Are modern marriages viable? And should men invest in relationships? Because it appears that so many men have lost their way in relationships, and so many men have become victims of no-fault divorce. So to those that are listening, Tim has dropped the link. Hit the link. Let's have a discussion. To those that are listening, what did you gather from that conversation? Tell me how it was relevant. And do you believe that modern relationships are worth it? Have you found a woman of your dreams? Have you been victimized by the delusion of love? Have you been blinded by romanticism? Let's have a conversation. Tim has dropped the link. Let's have a conversation. I want guys to join in because, in order to have a conversation, there must be a dialogue. So, that means 2 or 3 or more. So the link has been dropped. Come in and let's have a conversation. And once again, if you have not donated, donate to the show. Hit the super chat if you like what I'm doing, because I am a licensed therapist. These shows are very, 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 time consuming, but because I love the brotherhood and because I want good women to hear what men are saying, I decided to take it upon myself to do these time consuming shows. These shows are very time consuming, but once again, I do love the brotherhood. So Tim has dropped the link. Call in. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion about the show and the velvet color painting. What have you gotten from this whole concept of the velvet color painting? Have you been blinded by the rose-colored glasses? Have you been in a relationship and that relationship destroyed you in the past? And what have you learned about yourself that you're going to bring to your next relationship so that you won't have what's called a schema affliction? So let's have a conversation. I want someone to come pop in. I started the show off by showing a clip that I did about a month ago. That was a good show. And so cam up, let's have a conversation. Or you can call in on my mixing board. But let's have a conversation. What do you think about the parameters of the velvet color painting? So call in. Tim has dropped the link. Call in and let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion, all right? Because, you know, until you guys tell me what's going on, I can't help you. I want to be able to help you young men become the best versions of yourself. I want to be able to help you young men and older men become the best versions of yourself. But in order to become the best version of yourself, you can't be sabotaged by the past. You can't be sabotaged by the past. So, what did you think about the show? Shout out to my dear friend Sorrel, the Pillow Talk with Sorrel Bay. She says, very refreshing to hear men talk about how much they sacrifice for their children. Sad that they have to go do that, but it shows how much they care. We don't hear that side of the story. And you're 100% correct, sister. We don't hear that side of the story. And if you would like to join in, please join in to further the discussion about the velvet color paintings based on what you heard from the show that I actually done in the past. But if you want to pop in, Sorrel, and give your own point of reference, please do. Or if there are some men that are listening that want to pop in and give their points of recollection, feel free to do so because these conversations are very important. It's needed. And I don't want to see no man suffer in silence or become a victim of no-fault divorce. Now, what did you guys learn from the show? I asked you guys that several times. What did you learn from the show? Call in. Tim has dropped the link. And let's have a discussion. Because these conversations are very important. And listen, if you have been a victim of the velvet colored painting or the rose-colored glasses, please email me at kosherclinician@gmail.com. Please email me at kosherclinician@gmail.com. And I can help you work through the pathologies that you have dealt with as it relates to relationships. Please email me at kosherclinician@gmail.com. And let's have a conversation, all right? So to the guys that have been impacted, shout out to my man Dominic Sefman for the $2 super sticker. Thank you, brother, for that. And so, guys, let's have a conversation. You know, I got the lines open. My man Tim is always working hard for me behind the scene. Let's have a conversation about what you've seen about the show. Or if you want me to continue to show the show, I will continue to show the show. But it's a pre-recorded clip that I've done in the past. But let's have a conversation because some of you guys have been impacted by love. Some of you guys have been impacted by relationships. And because of that negative impact, many of you are suffering in silence. So we can't break the silence until we have a conversation. So Tim has dropped the link once again. Let's have a discussion because I don't want to shut the show down because I did the show for the brotherhood. And I want you guys to call in. So Tim has dropped the link. I'll drop it again. And let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation about, are modern relationships worth it? Have you been a victim of the rose-colored glasses? And are you more or less blinded by the illusion and or delusion called love? Are you blinded by the illusion or the delusion called love? So who's going to be the first brave soul to have a conversation? Because we can't break that cycle until we have a conversation. Now listen, guys,
if you want me to continue to show the clip, I can do that as well. But I prefer that someone come up and at least talk about what's going on. Yeah, so we got someone. Okay, we got my man Nick. All right, Nick, I can't see you, brother. Nick, you need to connect your device, brother. Connect your device, Nick, so we can have a conversation, brother. Connect your device. Your device is not connected, Nick. They need to connect their mic and cam before you can add them to the stream. So Nick, connect your device. And while Nick is connecting his device, I want one of you guys to pop in and pop into the show, and let's have a conversation. So Nick, if you want to, you can call in at the show by calling in at 919-717-8478. That's 919-717-8478. And if you can't pop in, you can call in. If you can't pop in, call into the show at 919-717-8478. We're going to have a live call in, and let's have a discussion, because many men suffer in silence based on the illusion of love. So call in if you can. That's 919-717-8478. It's 36 minutes after the hour of 1 o'clock. And so, guys, listen, I can do one or two things while I wait for Nick. I can do one or two things. I can continue to show that I had in the past, if I can find it. Or we can have a discussion from the brothers. Let's have a discussion. If you're at work, I understand. If you're at work, hit 1. But if you're not at work, let's have a discussion, because these shows are time consuming. Let's have a discussion if you're not at work. So call in. My man D said love is a con. You're correct. Love can be a con because it blinds men from reality. I tell all men that they should go into relationships based on pragmatism. Okay, hold tight. Hold tight. All right, can you hear me, brother?
Oh, definitely, I can hear you.
I can't hear you, Nick. But if you are talking, just go ahead and talk.
Can you hear me now?
Hear Nick, hit 1 if you can hear Nick. But hold tight. Hold tight. Can you guys hear Nick?
Hello.
Can you guys hear Nick? If you can hear Nick, hit 1. Great. So Nick, go ahead and talk. I can't hear you, but go ahead on and share what you want to share, Nick, with this conversation. Go ahead and share, Nick, what you want to share with this conversation. I can't hear you, but I will hear you on the rebound. So share what you must about the conversation called love. And Nick, once you're finished, just turn the chat off, or guys tell me that he's turned it off. So go ahead, Nick. Share what you want to share about this conversation, brother.
Okay. I think everything that you have been talking about, the chats, definitely a thing that affects a lot of responsible Black men that try to.
Guys, you can hear him. If you guys can hear Nick, that's fine. But Nick, when you finish, when Nick finishes, guys, hit the 1. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. No, I definitely think there's a veil that is placed on young Black men growing up. And then there's also this pressure to not feel the stereotype that is often associated with Black men. So sometimes I think we overcompensate with trying to not be a stereotype, and we oversell ourselves. And I think you guys spoke about it a little bit, about setting some type of exit plan. And sometimes we get stuck in just being blindsided by the reality of most women in these relationships that are unbalanced, that we don't think about our exit plan. So I just wanted to speak on that. So thank you. Bye.
So it appears that Nick is off, and that's good. So listen, to the guys that are listening, I want someone else to join in. Let someone else join in. And if you have not donated to the show, donate to the show, because these shows are very time consuming. Donate to the show, and let's continue to have the conversation. Thank you, Tim. Let's continue to have the conversation about the velvet color painting
and the illusion of love. Let's continue to have a conversation once again about the velvet colored painting and the illusion of love. Now, I want to ask someone the question, what did you guys get out of this show? Why was this show so paramount to helping you become a better version of yourself? What have you gotten out of this particular clip that I had with Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, Dr. Thunder, and myself, and my man Deacon Eric Spencer? What did you get from the show as it relates to love and relationships? What did you guys get from the show? And to the ones that have not popped in, let's have a conversation, because these shows are very important to helping men circumnavigate around the illusion called love. So what did you get from the show? What have you learned about the so-called illusion called love? What have you learned about love and relationships? Are you a victim? Do you feel that modern marriages are worth it? Should men focus on themselves? Join in and let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation about the impact of love and relationships. Shout out to my man Karan S. for the $2 super chat. Thank you, brother. Blessings, honor, and respect to you, good sir. Thank you, sir, for that super chat. I'm grateful that you guys are donating. I appreciate that, because these shows are very time-consuming. And I want to liberate as many young men as I can. While I'm doing these shows, do I want to get compensated? No doubt. I would never lie to that, because it's time-consuming. But do I love what I'm doing as it relates to young men and the brotherhood? Yes, I love what I'm doing. I love seeing young men in power, all men of all races, because when you go into relationships based on a 1950s model, you can become sabotaged by the illusion and the delusion of love. So, to the ones that have not called in, let's join in, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about the velvet colored painting and the illusion of love. So who else would like to join in and have a conversation? Because I love to hear what the guys are thinking. I did this intentionally, but I would love to hear what the guys are thinking as it relates to dating and relationships. I want to hear what the men are saying. And there are some women that are listening. I want you ladies to join in and give a counter argument if you think what I'm saying is not fair, or if you think what I'm saying is not right. Because many times men don't talk about or more or less share their pain. They suffer in silence. I think it's abuse if a man goes into a relationship and he's not getting his needs met. How many of you young men have went into relationships expecting one thing, but you didn't get what you thought you were going to get? And listen, guys, we see it all the time. We see it all the time in the media. You look at the Jada Pickett's of the world. You look at the Will Smiths of the world. They go in relationships thinking they give this woman everything, they're going to get the outcomes that they want. But unfortunately, many times they don't get the outcomes that they want, because they have been a sucker for love. They become a sucker for love because they believed in the hype. And listen, I'm from the class of 90, Gen X, and we had plenty of music back in the past where men thought they were going to get the things that they wanted from a relationship, but they never got it. They got married based on vows, and that woman said, I will seek to honor and obey you. But then once that woman gets the ring, she realized now she got all the power. And so, many folks in this space talk about a lot of different things. You hear people talking about salacious stuff, and I'm not against that. You do whatever you can do to make your channel grow. Because, I don't mind talking about celebrity news as well. But we could talk about all of those things, but if your mind is distorted based on what you perceive to be right, it can cause you to have and to suffer in pain. And so a lot of men right now are having those schema afflictions because they believe in the lie of love. They believe in the lie of relationships. They believe that once they got married, everything would work out for their good. But until you go do a non-fault divorce, until you open your eyes up and realize the woman that you pledged to give your life for doesn't love you anymore, it can be very dangerous. I've said in the past that a hopeless man is a broken man, and a broken man is a dangerous man. And it's very dangerous for a man when he's most vulnerable based on the illusion called love. Now listen to this, because I'm going to drop some fire for your mind. A woman is most vulnerable in a relationship when she had been imprinted or pregnant by a man. That's when a woman
is most vulnerable. But a man is most vulnerable when he's been imprinted by the illusion or the delusion called love. And men are most vulnerable because now that man is submitting his power and authority to a woman that he thought would be loyal to him till death do us part. But when he realized that woman has an alternative motive to get into that marriage, that's when he had what's called mental fragmentation. And he began to break. And that's why you see so many men becoming violent when they realize that either one, that baby wasn't theirs, or the relationship they thought that was going to give them the outcomes that they want no longer exists. And so these shows are important, guys. These shows are very important because love and marriage is a great investment. It's a great investment to give your life to a woman, to pledge your life to a woman. But when you live in a society with no fault divorce, then you got to ask yourself the question, what is the benefit? What is the benefit of the illusion called love? Should men go into love being more or less what I call pragmatic? Or should men go into relationships assuming that they're going to get sex, cooperation, validation, loyalty, and honor? How many men that are listening have been hoodwinked by the illusion called love? Because listen, guys, no man live unto an island unto himself. And until we have these conversations about the so-called trope called love, many men are going to suffer in silence. Shout out to my man E. Carter. Eric was with me on the trip to Brazil, and Eric is a good brother out of DC. Eric says, I think we need to differentiate girlfriend and wife. Women want benefits, but really girlfriend's sex. It's not a bargaining chip. Women want to just show up and be pretty, but the times have changed. And Eric, listen, join in the link, brother. Let's have a conversation. I don't know if you're at work or not. If you're at work, I understand. But let's have a conversation because, listen, this show is not a monologue. It's a dialogue. This is what I call a catharsis for the modern man. That's why I titled this show with a blue or with a red pill, because it's part of what I call the manhood chronicles, where men share their stories through pain. And so if men are not talking about their story, and they're not sharing their testimonies or their failures with other men, then how can those men grow? Iron sharpens iron. And it's my job to help sharpen the men that are listening, but also to the sisters that are listening that want to get the best outcomes on what to do to become the best version of yourself. So listen, Tim has dropped the link. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Tim has dropped the link. Let's have a conversation about, the velvet color paintings. Let's have a conversation. And so Rico Champion said, can you drop the link to the original video so I can check it out after this? Yes, I can, Rico. It's on my YouTube channel. It's called, hold tight, let me find it. I will drop the link. That was a very good show, but I'll drop the link. Hold tight as soon as I can find it. Because I want to see you men empowered. I don't want to see you guys suffering in silence. I don't want to see you guys suffering in silence. I don't want you guys to be victims of your own peril. But if you guys want me to, what I can do, I can finish showing the show because no one is calling in. I can finish showing the show for a couple of minutes. But I want to hear one or two more people finish, talking about this discussion. I want someone else to come in and share the discussion. And if you guys are listening, I can continue to show that show because it was one of the best shows that I actually did, having the venerable Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, Dr. Thunder, my man E. Spence. So if you want me to, I can finish showing the show if you want to. But before I do that, I want you guys to share the content. I don't think I've gotten a super chat yet. Not a super chat, a cash out. If you can, please donate to the channel. And like I said, let's have a discussion. There you go, Black Uru, no doubt. How you doing, brother? What's going on? Can you hear yourself? I can't hear you, Black Uru. Unmute yourself, brother. Unmute yourself.
Hey, how you do, brother? I had the YouTube playing in the background. So
no doubt. You're fine, brother. You are fine. So,
first of all, thanks. Thanks for having me up. Admirer and a subscriber to your show. So, been observing you. It's the first time I've had a chance to catch you live.
No doubt.
You know, the mistake that men make, black men including, I guess especially, is that we assume that we're going into a relationship with a woman, right? Where we're having some sort of mutual benefit, bargaining, you know, I get this, you get that, et cetera, sort of thing. When in reality, you're entering into a very antagonistic contest with you on one side and that woman and the state on the other side. And everything, and when I guess I say state, but I should say even more broadly, even than the state, because you're also competing against the media, government, whatever respective laws, court decisions, etc., that support the interests, the motivations, the emotional inclinations of that female. And most of us don't really know the enormity of what we're getting into when we get with a woman, especially if and when we impregnate her, and then especially if and when we marry her, that all the forces of nature, if you will, I use that term in quotations, I guess, are going to at some point likely be waged against you for the benefit of that woman. I think someone said earlier, I was listening to part of the tape that you played. You know, women very much know. Women learn very early in life that their sex is their trump card in almost every situation in dealing with the man. Everything from the lure and the promise of sex, the actual exchange of sex. Certainly, if there is a pregnancy that occurs, a child being born, you know, all elements of your interaction with her kind of center on that primary area of focus. And so they learn much more earlier than we do all the ways in which that their sex and their sexuality can be used as leverage against you. They learn that very early. They receive instruction from other women, uh, mothers, aunts, whatever, very early about the importance of how to utilize their sex and or their sexuality. And then the state, you know, tells you in innumerable ways how you can use your sex to manipulate, control, and even when necessary, destroy a man. So I think part of the problem with men is we don't really know when we engage with a woman how unfair the fight is, if you will. Because, well, first of all, we don't even know we're entering into a fight. I mean, even just the thought or the notion of that is kind of a turnoff because we think this is a woman. I love her. I presume she loves me. We're going to have a family and build a home, and we're sort of companions and partners together in that endeavor. But everything else encourages something very different of and from her. And until men understand and embrace the reality of what you're really confronting when you get with a woman, will remain at a disadvantage. And this is acutely the case for black men because you have the added element of us being uh, in this racial position of being despised or whatever. So black men are especially vulnerable to these sorts of manipulation from women.
And, you know, brother, what you're saying is very poignant and very profound. When did you come to your conniption or awareness or your red pill moment on Black Guru about the dangers of what's called love? When did you come
Well,
to
I
your
mean,
conniption?
I myself am married. I've had my ups and downs in marriage. So I'm not, pardon me, I have a call. Uh, pardon me. I have observed lots of great men, greater than myself, or I would consider greater than myself. You know, I've seen men lose or have business interests destroyed because of unexpected divorces, unexpected sexual betrayals, uh, situations where the children are not theirs, you know, sorts of things. or the woman moved in the boyfriend of the home that the man paid for. I've seen too much of that kind of stuff, or the son that has been turned against the father, because the father smartly got away from the mother. I mean, I've just have seen so many scenarios like that, and I've raised daughters into adulthood, and I've seen and in some ways been a victim to the tricks that females learn very early in life. And they're not just, we're talking about sex, or we were mentioning sex, but it's not just sex. It's the vulnerability, or the perceived vulnerability of the female herself, that is very persuasive with respect to how men respond. The tears, the feigned vulnerability, the feigned pretending to not know this, or not knowing how to do this, or didn't know that he was going to do that, and he tricked me, he lied to me. I've seen my own daughters play those games. So I've seen lots of different scenarios that acquaint me to the reality of the female, and have lived them personally.
I think these shows, Black Uru, are very powerful because it gives men a different perspective. When a man is being blindsided by love and romance, as I said earlier in the show, it makes him very vulnerable. And I do these shows because, as a therapist, I don't want to see men suffer in silence and become victims of suicide. It appears to me, Black Uru, and you tell me what you think, and then I'm going to let my man Low in Theory come in, that male mental health and male needs are often castigated at the expense of the woman. What's your take on that?
Well, I think, Black male mental health in particular, but I think there's hardly any consideration at all that's given to the mental health of men, outside of how it's perceived to be of some sort of benefit to women and or children. For the man himself, for his own well-being, for his own goodwill, there's hardly any consideration given at all, until unfortunately he has done something either radical to other people, or sadly even to himself. Then that's usually the only time in which there's any concern or consideration given at all to the mental health of men. And usually by then it's too late, because at some point either the law enforcement, or even sadly a morgue, must get involved.
And you are 100% correct, unfortunately. And because many times in our communities we tend to more or less demonize the importance of mental health, men often suffer in the silo. Low in Theory, how you doing, brother? Unmute yourself. And what do you want to add to this conversation about the rose-colored glasses? Have you been a victim of the rose-colored glasses, and also the velvet color painting as it relates to love and relationships?
First of all, thank you, sir. And again, of course, always honor and respect to Black Uru. Always good to see you, brother. I have been a victim to an extent, but I can say that when I got married, well, let me say this before. My father has always been one of my greatest examples of from watching he and my mother's relationship and their marriage, about 56 years of marriage, and just watching my father as he operates in life. And my father's a pastor, and as he leads people, and also as he leads men, he's always taught the men that he led how to be men, even as it pertains to dealing with women and marriage. And I just sort of matriculated into that same mindset. Of course, when I got married, I married a woman who was of course, you call a white collar woman. She was a high level earner, and spent a lot of time in competition in our marriage. But the problem was, she always would try to use sex as the soother. But when I wouldn't respond is when she wouldn't have a problem with it. It was when she would have a problem with it. But she didn't understand that all of this competition and combativeness that happened between us You disrupted my peace. And I can't, in good conscience of myself, smooth over what just happened by laying and having sex with you. She would never understand that. And so, of course, it caused us a whole lot of problems. But I went into that marriage thinking that this is going to be my wife for life. Everything was going to be great, simply because, you know, I thought she was the kind of woman I could trust with my life. And, you know, I went into it with the love mindset because I never had the experience, although seeing my father and my older brothers, me myself never had the experience of duty in a relationship. I always went into it with the love mindset. And I didn't learn until later in my life what duty was and how to separate my duty and love. And the things that I do in my duty are the result of how I love you. I can't love a woman like she envisions in her mind she wants to be loved. Because a lot of times women try to square men into their ideas of love when men and women love differently. But women just can't seem to grasp that concept that men love differently than you. But if men can understand that and not fall victim to falling into the ways that women want to be loved, as a pertain, I mean, as opposition to how men actually love, how they express their love, and through the duty that they do, and how they set up their life and the people around them. Men would need to pick up that concept and pick it up real fast, because if you fall into the way that a woman says that you're supposed to love her, 9 out of 10 times it's not going to work out for you in the end.
Well, listen, I agree with that. I agree with you 100%. Women tend to do love based on more or less romanticism. And what I've learned low in theory in Black Uru is that you can't give a woman that kind of power unless she earns it. Women tend to love based on feelings. Men tend to learn based on principle. If you look at the edicts of the gospel never told, Paul never told the woman to love her husband, but she did tell her to honor and respect him. And so the love currency for a man is honor, respect, and loyalty. That's his love currency. If a woman give a man honor, love, and respect, guess what a man to give her? He will give her the emotionalism called love. That's why, you know, Valentine's Day is so profound for so many women, because it's based on the illusion of feelings. Women need the feelings of love because women are very insular. They're made to feel from within. And so when a woman is getting that from a man, it's because she's earned it. But see, watch this, Black Uru. The problem with so many modern men is that modern men give their power away. They give their power away without making a woman earn it. Women come into relationships based on pragmatism, right? But a lot of men come into relationships, Black Uru and a low end theory, based on the romanticism of the past. Remember, men are the purveyors of love. We are the ones that give love to a woman. But see, in clinical psychology, if a man gives that love without making that woman earn it, it becomes contraindicated. What's your take on that, Black Uru, about men giving their power away as it relates to the romanticism called love, brother?
I definitely agree that is true. I mean, I think, you know, the irony of male and female relationships is women appear to be idealists, but inside they're very pragmatic, and men on the surface often appear to be pragmatic, but inside we're stark raving romanticists. You know, so I mean I think, and I think women can very often leverage that romanticism against us. I mean, I think one of the reasons why it is so easy for us to get into these one-sided situations with women is because our heart and our belief and our spirit and our ideals, if a woman looks a certain way or behaves a certain way or gives a certain aura, she will provoke a certain she'll provoke a certain romantic notions within us. Maybe it's something that maybe she is somehow similar to either some woman we had in the past or some woman we wanted in the past or some female we idealized in the movies or whatever. But she kind of inspires this romantic movie that starts to play inside of us. And of course, we want to do what we can to keep that movie going, and we don't really know that's what we're doing. Typically, we don't really know that's what we're doing, but that's what we're doing. We're the woman herself, the actual character and behavior of the woman herself becomes incidental to that movie or that romantic idea of that woman we want. And so we'll continue to feed into that fantasy, feed into that ideal, and not really realize that the real woman in front of that ideal, in front of that fantasy, is looking and behaving in very different ways. Now, I personally am very, my view of women is somewhat simple in this regard, in terms of your relationship with a woman. I think women basically, with a man, can be managed by two things: power and fear. Do you have some degree or can you manage some degree of power or leverage of that woman? And or does she fear something about you or fear the loss of whatever you have to provide to her? And if you don't have some combination of those two things, and I know they kind of overlap, one can fear can be technically be interpreted as being a product of power and vice versa. So I understand that. But if you don't have some combination of those two over a woman, that relationship, whatever you think it is, will not last very long. I don't put much stock in a woman loving a man and that lasting over the long term without that combination of power and fear or leverage.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Because you're right, there should be a level of power that will more or less lead to fear and leverage. But unfortunately, it appears that the modern court system does not more or less benefit men, Black Uru. And that's why I think men have to be very judicious and more or less very analytical in their approach as it relates to relationships. Shout out to my man, Karan S. for the $5 super chat. Thank you, sir. A woman earning as a man love should be similar to a man rites of passage to manhood. This will instill gratefulness for their men into women. And I totally agree with you 100%, Karan. Frederick Douglass said it better than me. He said that power never conceded without a struggle. It never have, and it never will. And once again, because so many men, to the listening audience and also to Black Uru and Low End Theory, have been raised in families where fathers are absent, many men have been conditioned to sacrifice their power to their mothers because they think if they do that, they can get the love. But what I've learned is very contraindicated, because if you give a woman too much of your love and attention without making her earn it, she doesn't respect it. She doesn't respect it. She just more or less, she'll take it. And that's why many women like Raekwon the Man Man, because, Raekwon the Man Man, they don't give a damn, because Raekwon the Man Man only cares about themselves. But in a relationship where the woman benefits and the man benefits is something I created called soul fusion. Soul fusion happens when men and women both benefit. And when that happens, then you have more healthier relationships. Shout out to my man, also to Jamal L. for the $9 super chat. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate the kindness that you guys are bestowing upon me. And so I appreciate that. And the Low End Theory, Black Uru said something that was very profound. What's your take on what Black Uru has said? And to the listening audience that would like to join the conversation, someone else can join in and add to the discussion about the rose-colored glasses based on the velvet paintings as it relates to love and romanticism. So, Low End Theory, what's your take on what Black Uru has said as it relates to power and how men sabotage their power in relationships?
I completely agree with what Black Guru said. And as you stated, the systems that we live in, they don't make it impossible, but they have kind of been conditioned and consorted to be against men having that power. And you can go as deep as the education systems and even the recent things that's happening within the Black culture with all of these investment banks and corporations investing, quote unquote, in Black women in business. It's kind of, it's weird because you're investing in our culture. Women are the ones, men are the builders, women are the consumers. So if you really wanted to grow a culture, and this, of course, this is not their main drive. If you want to build a culture, help a culture, you invest in the builders. But they have made it hard. It's been really bad over the last 20 years. So where you have a real decrease, and BGS did a stream about this that I was listening to, about the decrease of men in higher education. So you have the society creating the narrative to where men can't have the power anymore. And it falls into our relationships with our women. And so now you have women who walk around with their chest stuck out because of their degrees and their six-figure earnings. And so in their mind, that gives them power. But there's still a light at the end of the tunnel as it pertains to that, because men still have access to gaining power financially, socially, and all of that. They can still do that. So as it pertains to women, you have to have that power, and she has to have a certain amount of fear. Either she's going to lose you, and that's really happening right now, because you have a whole lot of sisters who have a problem with men dating out. And now they're trying to shame men for dating out. So that's a fear, because men are now starting to wake up and say, okay, what's the bad gall that y'all have been trying to feed us, we don't want to drink it no more. So what Black Guru said is 100% completely true.
Can you identify a time in your life, low end theory, where you compromise your power? And I'm from the class of 90. I'm a Gen X. You appear to be Gen X too. But
yes, I am.
When did you see this great divergence of women becoming very solipsistic, in your opinion? When did you see this great divergence when men begin to become more emasculated? Because when we go back in time, like our grandparents and our fathers, I don't think men were as weak or conditioned to be as weak as modern men now. What's your take on that, brother?
Well, it started, I graduated high school in 1992. 1993 or 94 was, and from what I remember, was when they turned all states' education systems over to the federal government. And they began to start standardizing students through testing and processing students instead of actually educating students. Because when I was in school, when I was in high school, I remember going to wood shop and auto shop and having architectural classes, learning computer drafting when they first created the program. And I remember all of those classes being filled up with men. So I think a big start of it was in the education systems that started breaking down, because what the schools were providing was empowering these young men to be able to leave school with a skill set and with careers. And of course, with that, a lot of the men who just weren't interested in going to college, their opportunity to be able to hone themselves as far as getting a trade all that was taken away. And so when they started to push education on women and not men, and of course we have a whole lot of different nuances that happen within our culture. You have the Clintons and all of the initiatives that they started that really, put a real breach between our men and our women. And so I can say for me personally, the first question you asked me, before I got married, I owned my own home. It was a small home, but it was mine. We decided to get married. My dad told me, and I remember these words just like he said them 2 minutes ago. He said, "Do not sell your house. I don't care what you do, keep your house." He didn't say why. He just told me those words. And what did I do when I got married? Because she had a bigger house than me. I let her convince me to sell my house. I let that woman convince me to sell my house because I was looking through those love rose-colored glasses in my mind, thinking we was going to be together forever. And after 6 years of marriage, I walked away with nothing.
Oh, wow.
So that's my thing that happened with me. And so since that happened, for about 10 years, I was a mean son of a bitch to women. I didn't want to be bothered with none of them.
Right.
That was just the truth.
Right.
Yeah, I gotten bruised, and that's what happened to me.
Black Uru, it appears that Low End Theory had a schema affliction. What do you want to add to what Low End Theory has said? And I want you to share with the audience when you compromise your power. And in this loaded question, what year did you graduate, brother?
High school?
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
I graduated high school in 1979.
Oh man,
So
you were Harold Melvin the Blue Notes, man.
I'm a boomer, and I saw the change earlier than Low End did because I'm older than Low End, and I think it was Title IX when they added to the civil rights law, specifically added sex to the list of items for which you could not, quote, discriminate, if you will. So I kind of right in and around in the mid 70s, I saw a lot of pro-female programming coming into my grade school and then later into my high school. And I saw a lot of sort of interesting preferences being given to females, even in the classroom. I remember having these experiences where, I've been in chemistry class or math class or whatever, and I recall the teachers sort of actively attempting to quell the more aggressive nature of the boys raising their hands to give answers and stuff like that. And I recall them intentionally saying, let the girls get a chance to answer the question. Don't talk over the girls, right? Don't be so aggressive and I saw a lot of very sort of pro-female programming coming in around in the, like I say, early to mid 70s, and then it just started to expand even into specific programs for girls. And as Low End said, back in the day, you had a lot of male programs or programs that piqued the interest of boys and young men, and they didn't go away when I was in high school, but I definitely saw them go away after I went to college. And younger male kin of mine, I saw trade schools go away or get consolidated, that sort of thing. And I saw then it become more difficult for Black boys and men in particular to get into those trade schools, because then they would create these specific sort of admission standards that, of course, would be more congruent with what resources were available to non-Black men. I saw that specifically in the Chicagoland area. So I agree with low end a lot when the trade opportunities went down, along with the very increasingly pro-female instruction and programming and organization of a classroom. That definitely began to kind of sabotage, particularly the interests of Black boys who were already at a disadvantage, even just coming into the school system.
That's interesting. That's interesting, and it appears like it's not going back to the times of the past. Von Braun
if you
said,
have resources, I just want to, if I may, if you have resources, you send your. This is my view. Of course, this doesn't necessarily represent your channel, but if you have resources and you have a son or a nephew, somebody you care about, send them to a boarding school, send them to a military school or whatever. Don't send them to public school. He is made a feminist in this school system.
Your opinion, how have modern schools diverted from traditionalism and masculine respect, in your opinion, brother?
Well, I mean, everything about the way the schools are organized, the way they're taught, even the way they're graded, are all are more lended towards the general inclination of females, just more cooperative, less competitive thing. There's lesser emphasis on testing and more on these sort of group projects. And, when I was in school, like, for example, when I was in school, in grade school, I had a teacher, and he organized our classroom into essentially groups and into teams. And you basically got points based on how well you did individually in terms of answering questions, what sort of exam or quiz scores you got. But then also the group got sort of a collective score as well. So what this did was it promoted being competitive individually, but also sort of competitive as a unit as well. And it created a very sort of healthy competition within the class, performance within the classroom. And he would give these prizes. Some of it would be either candy or fruit. I think he had a farm or something, but also even more expensive, train sets and things like that, sort of like at the end of maybe like the quarter or whatever. So it was a very very competitive, and you can imagine how the boys were operating in that environment. I mean, it made us very intellectually aggressive. And the interesting phenomenon about this was it made the guys who were not necessarily particularly interested in class, it made them want to befriend the smart guys in the class, which is what you almost never see. So it created a very sort of positive environment of competition, particularly amongst the boys. I mean, the boys were always much more aggressive and much more winning, and we got to get this math problem right. It's just, I don't think you can do that now, especially if it's clear that the boys are going to lead and sort of champion the competitive environment. I don't think you can do that now. You can do that maybe in a private school setting, and maybe certainly probably in a military school setting, but I don't think you can do that in a public school today. Not especially if the girls are not seen as being at or near the top in terms of the performance.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. It appears Black Uru, that your generation, they say that the boomer generation was the generation that compromised everything and tried to give women too much, because the boomer generation was the generation that actually worked in factories. They saw hard work and they believe in giving away love and romance without making their women earn it.
What's your take on that? And it feels like, and it also appears that Gen X is the generation that ran with it to the point that we totally sabotaged ourselves. What's your take on that, sir?
Well, I think the boomers get a bad rap in a lot of respects. Well, because first of all, this is the interesting. I wish people would actually read their history, right? Because a lot of these laws that, like no fault divorce, the child support laws, and the rules set that came from that, those rules are not authored by boomers. Those rules, those laws, those court decisions. Ronald Reagan introduced the United States to no fault divorce. Ronald Reagan was like from the greatest generation or whatever. He was not a boomer. The Supreme Court decision, the Roe v. Wade, those were not boomers on that Supreme Court. That was 1972. Boomers were like still in high school or younger, right? So I mean, we have a very kind of myopic view of history. In a lot of respects, boomers were victims of decisions. And I believe this whole sort of generational warfare thing is kind of pointless and silly and is ahistorical, because I think a lot of decisions were being made in response to other decisions that were made in response to other decisions. And so I think it's intellectually lazy to cherry pick one generation being to blame for everything and the other generation being wholly innocent of everything. I think there are a lot of things that happen. I think boomers made decisions based on things that they witnessed of their parents and then their parents before them. And like I say, there were major legal changes that occurred. I grew up. I'm old enough to recall the possibility of being drafted into Vietnam. Now it ended before I became of age, but I recall actually thinking that when I was in high school or whatever, if this thing lasts long enough. I mean, when I was in grade school, I remember thinking in like 1973 or whatever, if this thing lasts any longer, I might get drafted. Not whether you decide to go on your own volition to Afghanistan or Iraq. No, I remember thinking at some point, boy, if this war lasts any longer, I will probably get drafted. I knew guys not that much older than me who got drafted. So that's a whole different, and then just got sent off somewhere. That's a whole different environment, a whole different mindset than you have today. So I think a lot of us, particularly younger people, need to just kind of readjust. There was no internet, there were no computers, there was no instant access to the information of the ages for us. We might have to spend 5 hours to learn the fact that you can learn in 5 seconds. It's a whole different world. So I mean, this whole generational warfare, it's like I said, it's a very intellectually lazy and dishonest perspective of how the world and how history really went down.
Well, listen, I agree with you. I think both generations need to take ownership. I wasn't more or less trying to cascade boomers. That's not my intentions. I'm just more or less looking at do a schematic picture as it relates to the causal chain that we actually see in America today. Meaning, it started somewhere, and it proliferated based on the ignition from a particular generation. So I'm not trying to cast aspersions to particular generation.
I would say this:
right.
Boomers made bad decisions based on an understanding of what they were supposed to do versus the reality in which the world. Like, look, if you were raised in a traditional way, then you're not going to be prepared. If you were raised to think, because everyone around you were married and stayed married and had families or whatever, if you were raised that way, you are not prepared for your wife to use no fault divorce that came upon the scene and leave you and take your children away from you and then access whatever legal and governmental systems that were in place to extract resources from you while keeping your children away from you. You were not prepared to deal with that in the 1960s or 70s and 80s, because you weren't raised in that environment. Your mama and daddy stayed together. Your grandfather and grandmother stayed together. You weren't prepared and trained to deal with that. And that was the work, and that's what started happening to boomers. Definitely, as you guys, you low end, you're Gen Xer, definitely happened to you as well. But you weren't prepared necessarily to deal with that. We're only now, as Black men, really beginning to see the reality of the world we're in, really beginning to understand who our real opponents are. It's taken us a long time to come to grips with the fact that maybe our greatest nemesis is that woman who's sleeping right next to us in the bed. That's a very daunting and frightening thing for most men to consider.
Right. I agree with that. Do you feel like Black Uru, many of our women have been compromised, or do you think it's a concept of compromise and also rebellion? What's your take on that?
I don't know if those are mutually exclusive. I think left to their own devices, women will be very self-destructive and will destroy a lot of things around them. And that's not an indictment of women. I think men are a very important and necessary regulatory force in the life of a female, either by way of a father, certainly ideally if she has brothers, supportive brothers, then later a husband. You know, if you eliminate those masculine control mechanisms, she's going to indulge and engage into some very self-destructive behavior. And unfortunately, because the law and the courts give her almost exclusive dominion over children, she's going to wreck the next generation of children, who are then going to wreck the next generation of children. And again, it's not her fault. I think there are things about the nature of the female that require men to maintain some type of balance in their thoughts and behavior.
No, I totally agree with that, brother. I agree 1,000% that that there should be some kind of safeguard mechanism in place to not only give balance to men but also balance to women. But it appears, Black Uru, that balance have been more or less diminished or dissipated as it relates to men, and because of that, women have lost respect for men, and men have lost respect collectively for themselves. Black Uru and Low End Theory has added some excellent points, and if anyone else would like to pop in, please pop in. It's about 33 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock. If you have not donated, donate to the channel. Donate Cash App $7 Smalls, or donate to PayPal. And if you like what I'm doing, please share the content. Listen, these shows are very time consuming. I am a licensed professional, but I do love seeing men empowered, but more importantly, Black men empowered, because I believe that male empowerment often is put on the back burner as it relates to Black men. And so Low End Theory has added some points from a Gen X perspective. Black Uru has added a perspective from a boomer perspective, and someone else want to come in and add from a millennial or a zennial perspective. Come in and let's have a discussion, because these shows are necessary. We could talk about any other thing, but we don't talk about the empowerment of the American male and the fortification of the American man's mind. Then we'll continue to go in these circular arguments where no one actually benefits. So Low End Theory, what's your take on what Black Uru has said? What role do you feel the Gen X has played in their own demise?
Well, I think what happened was that we kind of conceded without a fight. I always use myself as an example. I watched my father. Well, I watched my grandparents, both sets of my grandparents, be married until death. I watched all of my aunts, all of my uncles on both sides of my family. They're still married to the people that they first were married to. But for my generation, I've seen, of course, myself. I got 2 brothers that are divorced. I've got a plethora of cousins that are divorced, no longer married to the people that they were first married to. So, and I think us kind of conceding to the the train that was picking up speed as it pertains to the feminist agenda, we conceded to that. We conceded to not walking in the authority and power we should have walked in as men and as husbands. And we acquiesced to what our women wanted. So we gave up our power. And for the sake of quote unquote love or for whatever. I saw it with my own eyes. And so I saw it with a whole lot of friends of mine. The same thing happened. We just kind of fell into complacency as it pertains to our relationships and our marriage. Not so much the generation being a progenitor of anything as important. I think we just kind of just conceded our power.
And that concession that we've conceded more or less has caused what in your best estimation?
Well, we can look at what's happening now. The result is man. The result is I'm afraid for my son. I want to keep him away from women as much as possible. My nephews, I constantly drill in them. Don't get involved with no women. I don't care if it's just sex. Keep yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because there's no way in the world that it'll ever be in your favor on any level now. So the result of that now is me trying to rectify the mistakes that I made and make sure that my nephews and my own son don't follow that same path.
Can I ask Lowen a question?
Yeah, give me a minute, Black Uru. Give me a minute. Let me shout out the super chat, brother. Give me 1 minute. So shout out to my man, Just Some Old Guy, for the $5 super chat. Absolute facts, friend. My baby boom marriage of 30 years ended with a no-fault divorce. What was wrong? She wasn't happy. Well, now I'm happy. And see, and that's why I had to bring this show to the forefront. Because, you know, when a man gives his best years of his life to a relationship only for it to end in a no-fault divorce, it can be very deleterious to the mental health of a man. And you know, many people don't talk about these, what I call social enigmas, but these shows are very important because I don't want to see no man suffer in silence from either a sexist relationship or the delusion or the illusion called love. Go ahead, Black Uru. I want you to add to it. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I have a question for Lowen, if you don't mind my asking.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Lowen, do you believe or do you think that your son and his cohort generation, do you think they should fight back against what's happening, or should they just concede and just kind of hide somewhere in a studio apartment with their PS5s? I'm being somewhat flippant, but at what point do men collectively, cross generations, fight back against what has been going on?
Yeah, I think they should most definitely fight back. And we're fortunate, of course, I'm fortunate to still have my father in my life and my uncles in my life. And we're fortunate to now have these platforms on social media and this platform here and people like yourself and BGS Ipmore and some of the older generations that are still here who are actually been around long enough to see 3 generations be affected by this and to be able to provide some guidance to us as we guide the generation after us. So the fight is actually on. It's happening right now. What we're talking about right now is so important. And for whatever reason, I don't know why a lot of people aren't talking about, aren't listening to this right now. There are a lot of streams happening right now, but this right here is probably the most important, because we're actually trying to provide a path and to give men tools to be able to fight. And there has to be an understanding as to what's happening or what has happened to men as it pertains to feminism and how the different societies and our own women are now against us. So men need to be able to understand so they can have the tools to be able to fight. So I'm highly appreciative to the Kosher Clinician and Black Uru and BGS Ipmore for providing information and experiences to us to where we do have the tools to fight. So the fight is on. My son will be well equipped to be able to fight what's happening.
Interesting. What do you think this counterculture movement have done to the fortification of your mind on Black Uru and also low end theory? You know, you see these different platforms being started, and what has it done to help you guys deal with the struggles that you guys have had internally in the past?
Well, I think it provides some perspective for many of us, because men, especially Black men, but not exclusively Black men, sometimes we kind of silo ourselves, especially with our own issues and problems. Oftentimes because of ego, a degree of shame, because we think we should have been able to handle things. We should have been able to make this woman understand, or in some cases brought this woman to heal, if you will. I should have been able to lead my family. I should have been able to stay with my children, especially my son. And because she was able to take my son away from me, take my home away from me, take half or more of everything I have, I feel as though I failed in some way. And I think having this environment helps men to see that, this issue and problem, or these problems, they're not unique to you. And as capable, as smart, as hardworking as you may be as an individual, there's a much broader, much more potent, much more resource system, or actually a matrix of systems in place that are very much operating against your interests, against your liberty, against your maintaining resources and freedom and power. And to the extent that this environment helps you to understand and accept that, and then maybe at some point establish some possible way to deal with, and maybe even eventually surmount it, it is a good thing. I think we're very much at the beginning of any sort of real solutions, and this environment provides an avenue towards that.
No doubt. I totally agree. I think it's almost like the age of Aquarius. This new enlightenment is definitely going to benefit a lot of men. I've always said that many men have went to the grave with dreams and pains untold. And you can hear the echoes from the grave sites. You can hear the pains and the visions and the dreams of many men buried in the grave. And I took it upon myself never to allow another man to suffer in silence, because he didn't know what he was getting into, or he didn't have the power and the tools to overcome the burden of pain. So I think these shows are very important. Also, to the baby boomers, not baby boomers, but to some of the millennials or the zennials, please join in the conversation with me and Black Uru and Low End Theory. And I'm going to sign off in a few minutes, but these shows, once again, are very important. And if you have not donated, donate to the channel. If you have not shared, share this channel with as many men as you can, because I am a licensed therapist, and I seek to inspire hope and power in not only Black men, but all men that are struggling or suffering in silence. Marcus B said they conceded or stripped of power. I guess that was the question. It's probably a combination of both. Miss Parker said that I don't see it turning back. I don't see it either, sister. I think we need to come up with a different solution, like teaching our men about biblical marriage and not state marriage. That's an excellent point. I totally agree. Von Bryant said that question for Lowen, instead of keeping our sons away from women, shouldn't we teach them how to deal with women and equip them with knowledge? How do you add to that, Lowen theory?
Well, that has to come at a certain time of maturity. You know, you can't completely stay away from them. That's not an absolute thing that can happen. But how you deal with them can be controlled. I think at a certain age, you start to get those little likes and everything at a certain age. But a lot of times, where it goes off the tracks is not knowing how to conduct yourself and deal with girls at that age. That's why fathers are so important. That's why mothers letting the father be the one to be the guidance, the main guidance for the child is so important. Because all mothers think that it's cute that a little girl like their son. But fathers we have a whole lot of foresight as it pertains to that. And so I think in this space, and to go back to the question that you had before, I think in these YouTube spaces and social media spaces, we need to be more solution based as opposed to problem based. We talk a lot about the problems, and you do have to understand the problems to be able to create solutions. But I think being inundated over and over and over and over and over again with more problems than solutions kind of makes the scales unbalanced. And I think what we need to start doing is start to inject better information into our young men. Not so much that they need to hear about how bad things are. Okay, we know they're bad. Okay, let's kind of show you a different view. Take off the rose-colored glasses. This is a clear glass, and show you the solutions to make our men better. I think when our men become better, our entire culture and society will be better. But we focus a lot more on what the women are doing, how they are against us. Okay, they're against us, cool. But it's almost like when like the fight on Saturday, Tyson Fury didn't worry about Deontay Wilder gaining more weight, getting more muscular, because he already had in his mind that he could beat him. I'd already beat you twice. I'm going to beat you a third time. And I think once we start to give our young men and our boys more solutions than problems, we present them with more solutions than problems, we'll have better outcomes.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, sir.
Well, if I may, Lowen, the problem with your analogy with the Fury Wilder fight is that was a fair fight. All the rules are set up in such a way that either opponent has an equal opportunity to win or lose the fight. Tyson doesn't have 15-pound ounce gloves, and Fury has 12-ounce gloves. Tyson isn't allowed to hit Fury 50 times, and Wilder can only hit. Tyson can hit Wilder 50 times, but Wilder can only hit Fury 20 times. That's the environment your son is going into. Your son is going into an environment in which a girl could hit him effectively 50 times, and he can't hit her once, both literally and figuratively. That's the problem with your analogy. And that's the problem. We can't just, the solution is not just with building better men, because they're still going into an unfair fight. And at some point, we got to help them, not just by making them better men themselves, but we got to address the system itself that makes and enables the unfair fights. You know, the school system that almost in every way favors the girls, the colleges that now have all these very grossly intrusive regulations, you know, that basically put 18-year-old boys in male versions of the chastity belt. You know, all the ways in which, if there's any sort of encounter between any male and female, the male is the presumptive villain when the girl says he's a villain. You got to address those in addition to making the young men, your son and his peers, the best they can be. Because in the end, he could be the best damn guy with a knife or a sword that lives. If that woman has a gun, he's dead.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
I think it's going to take a little bit of introspection, but also a radical reform in the laws. I don't think you can never totally absolve relationships with women, but I think the way Black Uru was saying it, more or less, as you look at it from a pragmatic perspective, it definitely needs to be looked at more carefully through the lens of how this is going to impact me long term. You know, we can think of short-term solutions or we can think of long-term solutions. The problem is, you know, the political infrastructure that we have now has created the chaos that we're actually dealing with. And that chaos, unfortunately, is going to be to our own chagrin, because it's through policies that we can change the outcomes of this current cesspool that we see here in America. Hold tight. Let me finish reading some of these points of view. So Ms. Parker says, do you think if women was the breadwinner, Black Uru, would she leave as easy? This goes to you or Low End Theory. What's your guys' take on that?
What's the question again? Pardon me?
The question is, do you think if a woman was the breadwinner, would she leave as easy? That's what Ms. Parker said.
All the social science says if the woman is the breadwinner, that relationship, that marriage is doomed.
Doomed.
All the social science says that. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's doomed, but also, do you think if she was being, I guess what Ms. Parker's saying, if she knows she's going to get a penalty due leaving the relationship, do you think she would leave? That's what she's asking.
Oh, no. I mean, look, as I said earlier, power and fear. And that fear includes fear of loss. If women were much more punished, including economically, for leaving a marriage, they'd be less likely to leave. Women are very, like I say, women pretend to be idealists, but they're actually pragmatists.
Right.
Women are very economically pragmatic.
Yes, sir. I agree. I totally
now,
agree.
Here's the other side of it. Those women themselves would be a lot less likely to marry, because, you know, women are much more apt to marry when they stand to gain than they will when they stand to lose. So those women are going to be less like a woman who knows she's going to be the breadwinner through the duration of a marriage is going to be a lot less likely to marry.
That's true.
Right.
I totally agree. Yeah.
I agree with that as well. I agree with that 100% as well. Low End Theory and also Black Uru. To some of the millennials or zennials that have been impacted by the rose-colored glasses, and also through the delusion of the velvet color painting, I want you guys to join in. Tim has dropped the link. Tim dropped the link again. And so the young men have been more or less evaded or persuaded through this enigma, this social enigma. Let's have a conversation, because I'm about to end this show in a minute. I love having these discussions, but as I said earlier, I seek to empower all men of every ethnicity, but more importantly, the Black man in America, as he continues in many ways to be a mule in society. So to some of the young men, they have been impacted by this social enigma. Let's have a conversation, because these conversations are important. But if a millennial is not listening, or a zennial, Black Uru, I want to ask you the question. what have you taught your sons and your grandsons, if you have boys, about how to circumnavigate this negative maze called modern America?
I have no sons. I have two adult daughters. So, but I definitely have a couple of nephews, young kin or sons of men, either cousins or friends whom I love and care for very deeply. And I tell them, first of all, I tell them to look out for each other. Don't go it alone. Share your story, share your information, share your experiences, even when you've made a mistake, and you've been vulnerable or whatever. It doesn't help you in this current environment to operate like a lone wolf, because everybody else is alike. Black girl magic, black girl rocks, all that. The women know very clearly that they need to stick together. They need to operate together, that they leverage power in the system by having some sort of organized bodies, relationships promoting their interests. So I tell them, you got to stick together, even if there's certain parts about this guy or whatever, kind of different. You got to stick together. You obviously got to use a condom every time. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whatever is going on, whatever promise she made, whatever test results she showed you, regardless, use a condom all the time. Of course, if there's ever any notion of any sexual manipulation and or any possibility that she will, quote, cry rape or cry you hit me or whatever, get the hell out of there right away. Get out of there. Don't even try to figure it out. Don't try to understand or empathize or appreciate her perspective. No, because at some point, best believe at some point, you're going to be talking to a cop. Every day you stay with her, there's that potential that you're going to be talking to a cop, and that's going to be a one-sided conversation.
No doubt.
And I think in general, and this is the toughest part, and this is where I think we as older men need to be more responsible and need to be more impactful. All over this country, all over in school systems, universities, they are making laws, they are making regulations, they are making policies to entrap our sons everywhere, every state, every school district or whatever. It's really incumbent upon us to really begin to engage and push back against all this programming that's geared towards enslaving, exploiting, and when they deem necessary, destroying our sons. All of us need to become much more actively engaged in pushing back against those things.
I agree. I think we do need to be more actively engaged, brother, in pushing back. I just think a lot of men don't understand the inherent power that they have. And because of that, they tend to concede to power instead of demanding power. And that concession of power has led to their own demise because they're not valued by the women that many sometimes have more or less decided to protect without demanding any level of reciprocity. So, I agree with that. Men need to start demanding. We need to start continuing to work as groups. And, I always use the mantra. I say, as men, we may not agree on all things or ideologies, but we come together as allies of a common cause only to dissipate once the crisis is over. And so this is a crisis in manhood. And in many men on this panel, we're not going to agree on all things or ideologies, and I'm okay with that. But I love the things that Dr. T. Hasan Johnson often talk about. He said, listen, we're coming together to advocate for one another. We're from different parts of the world. We're from different backgrounds. We're from different faiths. But we do understand that there's a crisis in masculinity that needs to be addressed. And when men go into relationships not being pragmatic, it causes them to suffer in silence. And, can you imagine, you heard Dr. T. Hasan Johnson talk about Black Uru and Low End Theory, that he was in a sexual relationship for 5 years. What's your take on hearing that? How did that more or less shock you mentally?
Well, I mean, that's a very common thing, not just amongst black men. I mean, again, power and fear. When you remove any sort of power, when you remove any sort of fear in a relationship with a woman, amongst a lot of other things that are going to negatively impact you. One of the things, look, this is what I believe. I think to some degree, a woman will continue to have sex with you because she fears the possibility of losing you. Right. And fears the possibility of what that loss means. And it could be just the physical act itself, the pleasure you give her, certainly.
Right.
But then also whatever sort of resources, whatever sort of social standing that being with you confers upon her, whatever sort of, obviously, any sort of familial connections that her being with you provide to her, your protection, your security, both economically as well as physically. When she does not have to fear the loss of any of those things, where she can live very comfortably, she's not necessarily particularly turned on by you sexually, or there's some other things that are going on, then yes, very often they will stop having sex with you. Look, if you're with a woman over the long term and she's not afraid of the real possibility that you have and or will have sex with another woman, then you're probably going to have at a certain point a risk to your ongoing sexual congress with that female. A woman should fear, I don't give a damn if you're married to her 20 years, she should fear the possibility of one of your skanky friends wanting to give you some.
Right.
I totally agree.
I agree with that, brother. I agree with that 100%. I think when a woman gets too comfortable in a relationship, she's more at risk of more or less taking you for granted. But if she realizes that you always have options and at any time you can abort, then she is more prone to stay. That's why when I travel abroad, guys, I'm going to be in the movie called Frustrated 3 with filmmaker Al Grease. And my man, BMO Deacon Eric Spencer, he's one of the purveyors of the BMO group. When men have options and know what their power is, they tend to get more cooperation. I told people that in behavioral psychology, there's a such thing called the equilibrium. When a man concedes his power, he gives his power to the woman. But when a man demands power and is mutually beneficial for him and the woman, then you have what's called homogeny. And so it's very important that men learn not to concede their power in relationships, but they demand power. Because you're 100% correct. You know this, when men are on the market, that woman is a lot more cooperative. But when that man gets off the market, then she gets comfortable. And I understand part of it, Black Uru. It's just human nature. That's part of it.
The problem with a Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, I'm a supporter of his, very much believe in what he do. But, look, to become a tenured professor, for a black man to become a tenured professor at a major state institution, he has to live his life in a very organized, predictable, very earnest. He has to live a very clean life.
That's true.
A safe life.
Right.
He's not going to become tenured otherwise, because they're going to look for any and every reason to not give him tenure.
Yes, I agree with
so the fact that he got tenure means that he lives in such a secure and predictable and wise and smart, organized way that a woman is going to get comfortable with that. It's not a fault of his at all for him to become the quality in this society as a black man. See, his white counterpart could be kind of like a hippie type guy having sex with his students. I mean, I hope I'm not being too honest, No, don't let me go afield from whatever standards you have.
Right.
All I'm saying is I've gone to several universities, and I know that other professors can operate in ways that a black male professor cannot operate. I know that.
Right, I agree with that. There's some truth to that.
I've known women who've gotten grades from the chemistry professor that they didn't deserve to get, so to speak.
Right.
So my point is this: because of how he had to live and conduct his life to get to where he got, a woman is going to get bored with him. It's not his fault at all.
Right. Right. No, there's a lot. I see where you're coming from. There's definitely a different standard for professional black men. I've seen it myself as a black male clinician than it is a lot of times for our counterparts. Shout out to this kid's dad. Illinois and Philadelphia have introduced bills where a woman can sue a man for consensual sex or unwanted pregnancies. How do you fight that? That's an excellent question. I'll let Low End Theory take that in a minute, but let me also shout out my man Vaughn Bryant for the $5 super chat. Thank you, Vaughn Bryant. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you for that. And then also, the aspiring matriarch said, do you gentlemen believe you should form a new political party? What's your take on that, Low End Theory and Black Uru? And then we're going to sign off in a few minutes, as this has been a very powerful and predictable show. So go ahead. Do you believe, Low End Theory, that we should form a new political party? And then Black Uru, I want you to give your points of reference to that. And once again, shout out to Vaughn Bryant for the $5 super chat. Thank you, brother.
Well, I think that that's not a bad idea. The problem would be getting some of our brothers to understand the necessity of it. But the idea would work. And of course, along with that, all of our resources would come with us. But, like I said, getting brothers to understand the necessity of it, and the reason to separate ourselves from the present parties that are happening now would be the big uphill battle. But we've heard people like Dr. Claude Anderson talk about things like this, and of course he's been ignored for years. But understanding what he was really saying, you see how necessary it really is to do something like that. So that's something that I would definitely get on board with.
Interesting. What's your take on that, Black Uru, real fast, as we're about to sign off in a minute, as I have to see patience?
I think now is the perfect time for a party for black men, given the political environment. Are black people, and especially black men, particularly excited about the current presidential administration? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, right.
I think this is a golden opportunity,
right,
for a black male-oriented. I mean, given what Ice Cube presented prior to the election last year, I think this is the growing criticism of certain popularized woke groups. I won't give any names, unless you want me to.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
But we know who they are and what acronyms they use.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna do a show on that.
Given the growing and rightful criticism of those kinds of entities, the Goldman Sachs giving $10 billion to black women, I think this is as great a time for black men to start their own party as there can be within the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think we should do it. And I think it would become a very potent form of leverage in this current political environment, if done the right way.
No, I concur 100%. If done the right way, that's the key. It has to be done the right way, but unfortunately, you're going to always have nefarious forces that are going to try to sabotage.
Yeah, there would have to be a bloodletting. And unfortunately, some of the blood would have to be letted from some folks who look like us, frankly.
Right. Well, Tavis Smiley said it better than I could say it. He said that my skin folk is not always my kinfolk. And I concur with Tavis 100%. I don't get caught up in this notion because you're black that is synonymous to male empowerment. There are agitators that really are conspirators behind the scene that seek to usurp their power and the authority of many black men. So I agree with you 100%, brother. Skin color is not necessarily the panacea to the problems that we have currently in society. So real quick, to the millennials, because Black Uru was dropping some gems. He's an intellectual brother. I think I've seen you on BGS and also Dr. Hasan Johnson.
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
I think
I'm old man like BGS. So,
I call you and BGS the mystical wizards, man.
Brilliant, brother. Brilliant.
Yeah, I recognize Black.
Well,
man.
I give all deference to BGS. I think the quality of this environment. I think he's a progenitor of the intellectual quality of this environment overall.
Right.
And I know that's a big statement to make, but I have observed what we consider to be the manosphere long enough to know that he is the bedrock of the quality of the intellectualism in this environment. I genuinely believe that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. BGS.
So I give him all deference and honor in that regard.
Well, BGS definitely adds some intellectual flavor to the conversation. I definitely agree with that. And I think, it's good to have these conversations, and look at it through the lens of different ideals. I think it's good to have cogent and fair debates without name calling and acting like idiots, because that's the only way that we're going to find resolve. Unfortunately, this current milieu called America. But before we sign off, I want to thank everybody for donating to the channel. If you have not donated, please donate to Cash App $7Smalls. Please donate to Cash App $7Smalls. And also, before I end this discussion, is there a millennial or a zennial that would like to add to the discussion? But if not, I want to ask Low End Theory, what did you get from this conversation briefly? And then also Black Uru, what did you get from this conversation? Because these conversations are merited and time worthy. All right. So what did you get from it, Low End Theory? I love your insight.
Well, just being able to express. A lot of the men, of course, a lot of times men don't have spaces where they can express the things that their life and their experiences, and then get knowledge from people like yourself and Black Uru. So just being able to have the space to express the things that you have been through, and get some insight on the future and the things that you would like to see as far as Black men are concerned, it's always a great thing and be a part of. So I really appreciate it. Appreciate Black Uru always being a voice of reason and dropping a lot of good knowledge on all of us. So that's what I got from it, and I definitely appreciate you letting me come up.
Oh no doubt, man. Listen, no man exists lives on the island to himself. We don't exist in a silo. Even though I'm a therapist, I think we need to have these conversations as men. We will agree on some areas and some areas where we don't, but I try to be civil even if I disagree. I don't believe in the name calling, the goofy stuff. But if a person wants to get goofy, I can get goofy too. But I try to be civil because I believe in civility. Then we can learn from one another, even if we don't agree. But Black Uru, what did you get from this conversation? And thank you for chiming in. And guys, please share the content. Help me get this channel to 2,000. We're at 1,850. We're 250 away from 2,000. But I want people that are subscribers to think like you. I don't want just anyone, because everyone and anyone cannot absorb this type of content. And so, Black Uru, what did you get from the conversation, brother, as we're about to sign off?
Well, thanks for having me on your panel. Like I said, I've been an admirer and subscriber of yours. And so I appreciate being honored to speak with you. I myself in the past have sought counsel from a Black male clinician, so when I saw you and I heard your background, in a way, I hope that this conversation here sort of honors the help that I received from one of your brethren, although your brethren was a lot older than you are. So I definitely appreciate it, and I like to be a promo. Look, if you brothers out there need some help that Kosher provides, or brothers of his ilk provide, please, if it's available to you, seek that help from a Black man. I am very much a proponent of Black men getting this type of help from other Black men. I would have had some difficulties continuing, especially even in my marriage, had I not received that counsel way back in the day. So I just want to make that statement, give that promo for you, kosher clinician, and other Black men of your profession and ilk.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you, sir.
You know, in this environment, I just, I see this environment growing. I see men like yourself, diverse, professional backgrounds, adding something, different, special, great. Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, B.J.S. Ibmore, the lead attorney. It's just growing. It's like a garden in a way that's growing with all these beautiful different types of plants and flowers that are adding all of this substance and providing nutrients in the soil. And as parts of it wither, something even better grows up, bigger, stronger, and more voluminous. And that's how I see the manosphere. And I hope in some small way, I can provide, by way of my experience and understanding, maybe my intellect, in some small way to that. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that, clinician. And I look forward to talking with you again real soon.
Oh, no doubt, man. It's an honor, man. I always like hearing intellectual brothers, man. I love seeing young men and men inspired. As I said before, these shows are very time consuming. They're very time consuming, and I'm not going to be like some guys. I'm not going to beg you for money. I like it when you do donate because it helps me recuperate. But these shows are time consuming, and I do want to get compensated, but I'm not going to do it to the point that I become unscrupulous. I'm not going to do that. But I'm always honored for good sisters like Miss Parker, Back to the Basics. Go check that sister out. I love Miss Parker. She always adds some intellectual concepts. She got that SAG swag. So we tend to resonate as a Leo. But like I say, it's been an awesome conversation. We're about to sign off. And Low End Theory, feel free to come back on the channel at any point, brother. Feel free. Also, Black Uru, feel free, because I got another fire show coming up, man. And guys, do me a favor, Black Uru and Low End Theory, share this content with as many men as you can. You guys will help me reach my subscription rate of 2,000 at some point. But only share it with like-minded men. Don't share it with anybody. Share it with like-minded men. And you guys will help me reach my quota of 2,000 as I continue to grow my brand. And as I continue to grow my channel. And so we're about to sign off, and we're going to continue to work hard to give you guys quality content. And once again, much love and blessings to the brotherhood. Dr. Martin Luther King said in the past, he said, if I can help somebody, he said that my living is not in vain. And I've said it before, and I've said it in the past. Frederick Douglass said that power never conceded without a struggle. It never have, and it never will. But I want to give you young men the power to become exemplars of the men of the past, but it's going to start with self-introspection, self-love, and also uncovering those negative thoughts in your mind in order to become the best version of yourself. Be well.
Tell me if I got it wrong, but you don't wanna be alone. Spend the evening by yourself, but you'll miss me when it's getting late. Got it all, babe, save arms when you're ready. I'm here when you need me, I'm yours if you'll let me. Got it all, babe, save arms when you're ready. I'm here when you need me, I'm yours if you let go. Boy, loving is a safe card. You don't have to play hard. Love and let go. Boy, you don't have to play when it's getting dark. Got it all, babe. Save arms when you're ready. I'm here when you need me. I'm yours if you let me. Got it all, babe. Save arms when you're ready. I'm here when you need me. I'm yours if you let go, boy. Loving is a safe card. You don't have to play hard. Love and let go, boy. You don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. Every time it's a blessing, and I know we can take it to the next level. If you let go, boy, you don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. If you let go, boy, loving is a safe card. You don't have to play hard. You love and let go, boy. You don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it. Every time it's a blessing, and I know we can take it to the next level. If you let go, boy, you don't have to play smart. We can take it slow. You know it.
Sometimes it burns, sometimes it hurts. When you say my name, but thinking of hers. I don't wanna know, don't want you to go and leave me behind. No, I don't wanna see if it isn't me who's on your mind. 'Cause I don't know what you're looking for. Oh, and I don't know what to do. Hold back, let go. There is nothing more for me to show. You're hiding to breathe, running from me. Do you really wanna be in love? Halfway from home, I picked up my phone. I stared at your face, but it's not your tone. Saying oh hello, who are you to call me late in the night? She says I just gotta say that it's here with me and not where he might be. 'Cause I don't know what you're looking for. Oh, and I don't know what to do. Hold back, let go. There is nothing more for me to show. You're hiding to breathe. this down.